So this is section 7.2, and we're going to go over these chapters in this section. It's chapters 62, 64, 66, 67, and 69. And just a little recap from the prelude of chapter 7. This was a time when there was a great deal of, I want to say, even further experimentation. There were new instruments that were coming on board. People were experimenting with electronic things. Kind of the sky was the limit. They said, be creative, be expressive, be whatever you want to be. And people really did do some crazy experimentation. Not only musically but artistically. There was also let's go off to foreign lands and find out what they're doing. I'm playing right now what's called a Javanese. This is a gamelan ensemble. A gamelan ensemble is a really large group of players with a lot of equipment. I'm going to show you a couple examples here, switching this over. I guess I can't do that. Can I do that? Yeah, here we go. That's the Javanese gamelan. And here's another example of that. I want you to hear the sounds. Okay, this one doesn't have any visual, but listen to the sound of this. There are some wind instruments that's primarily percussion. The thing about a Javanese gamelan is that there's a real freedom of phrase. Like we're used to 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Well, there are 7 measure phrases, 15 measure phrases. There are phrases that go in like 3, 5, 3, 5, 4. That's a cycle. And it's really different than Western music. Composers in the middle of the 1900s here, in the middle of the last century, they were experimenting. They were trying new things. They were trying to discover stuff that wasn't done before. You know, the whole expressionistic movement took life in a very different direction musically, while the minimalists also came after the expressionists. What were minimalists? They actually, I mean, the name is a little bit descriptive, but they would take music and minimally translate it to just rhythms, or they diced it up into a whole bunch of things. They had a ton of patterns, and the patterns were sometimes just like layers. Like somebody would go, and then another would go, and then they'd layer that, then they put another one on, and then there would be, whatever. I mean, I use clapping examples, but those would go on for minutes. It was minimalistic. It didn't have a lot of big swells or down times. This was a great influencer of several people. In fact, Claude Debussy, the guy from Impressionism, was influenced by Javanese gamelan right around the turn of the century, in the late 1890s. Then another guy, his name was John Cage. He was really moved by, this would be Eastern music, and he was moved by it so much that it influenced him. He says it influenced me greatly. Well, he wanting to recreate this, and he recreated it with Western instruments. Well, there aren't really a lot of Western instruments except percussion instruments that make that same sound. You know what he did? He took a piano and he did something, it's called prepared piano. He was the first one to ever do this. He stuck a bunch of stuff in the piano keys. Like when you open up a piano, it's got a bunch of those, not in the keys, in the strings. He prepared the piano with screws and these little hardware pieces called mollies. The yellow things you're going to see here are mollies. There's wire that's connecting the strings to make it sound like this. This is actually a piano playing. And let me show you it. I'll turn it around. Look at that. It's actually pretty remarkable. Listen to what it should sound like. I mean, this is a full live Javanese gamelan, and then this is what he wrote, which, you know, it's pretty extraordinary. Thing about it, when you prepare a piano, you kind of mess up the strings. So look at there. So like after you prepare it, it has to stay prepared, because other than that, you have to replace all the strings because you compromise the strings. Stetson University has one or maybe two of these that they only put in the room. They put in a room and are only using it for John Cage music. John Cage, I actually met him when I was in college. He came and we did a piece that he did. Very unusual man, really creative. I wouldn't say his creativity was super high skill level, but he experimented like crazy. He's considered a minimalist. He wanted to do stuff different at a time when people were doing things differently. You know how our music is based on a 12-note interval, half steps. Well, he and another guy named Henry Partch and Harry Partch and Henry Cowell, both those guys were super experimental like John Cage. Harry Partch was known for his microtonal music. So like between a C and a D, for instance, a whole step, he would have 2 or 3 microtones. So he would have quarter tones. You know, we have 12 steps on a piano, while he would create instruments that would, or write music that would go the notes between those notes. So he had a scale that was like 43 microtones in an octave. What? I mean, very unusual. All these guys took advantage of electronic music and some of the things that electronic music would afford. Electronic music had, it was in its infancy, and it had these weird sounds that were created. Well, those sounds became the instrument. And those weird sounds were nothing necessarily tonal, but they were basically just unusual things. And then they included other like crazy stuff that we would consider noise, but they considered it music. Listen, John Cage did these things called Fontana, like Montana, but Fontana mixes. Listen to this. This is actually written. It's a vocal piece, and what these other sounds are probably pre-recorded. You do some of the vocal stuff on there. You're singing this at a very specific time. But listen to all the other stuff. It's like you're tuning a radio, but you're not landing on anything. This is called an aria, like you would find in an opera. John Cage. How about that? Huh? Here's another one. This is a saxophone piece. And, okay, those are recorded saxophones. Listen to them. He recorded it and then just played it fast. He made an album with this, guys. Isn't that something? That white noise stopped on purpose. Yeah, it comes back in a little bit later. Here, I'll skip ahead. I don't have a recording of it, but I heard John Cage made a recording. He opened his, in New York City, he opened the window and he recorded the sounds that were from the street, and that was part of the music that he had, that he played in the background of something else he layered in, and then he layered in something else. So, very unusual. It's like all things count now in music, and the experimentation that happened was very non-traditional. So it's not like, hey, let's see what we can do with a clarinet. It's basically taking any kind of a sound and giving a permutation with it. It's really crazy. So this is the you'll see chapter 62. The reflection is all about another piece that John Cage wrote, and as you watch it, I'm gonna give you some total latitude to be in awe. He wrote a piece called 4 minutes and 33 seconds. It's in 3 movements. You actually, for 4 minutes and 33 seconds in front of a piano, you put the music out, you have a stopwatch, you open the piano lid, movement 1, for X amount of seconds. You close the lid, you open it again, movement 2. Close the lid, open it again, movement 3, and that whole piece lasts 4 minutes and 33 seconds. You don't play a note. It's silence. It's interesting what he says, though, at the beginning of the recording. This is on your reflection, so listen to it, and it's his voice, John Cage. He says, composition is the combination of sound and silence. When you mix those, music is made up of sound and silence. When you mix those, it's called composing. I have nothing to say, and I'm saying it. So he says, I have nothing to say, and I'm portraying that. I'm putting that on paper. Very interesting. It's also interesting that he includes, music is usually a combination of basically all sound. He includes no sound. But the truth is, the power of his statement, as ridiculous as it is that music without silence is ridiculous in itself. It has no context. Like cold without hot. If all you know is cold, you don't know what hot is. If all you know is hot, you don't know what cold is. But if you know the both, you say, wow, it's really hot. In comparison to what? To cold. Wow, that's really silent in comparison to what? Loud. Interesting how music we know traditionally as all sound. This is some really way out there crazy stuff.